Welcome, everyone. This is episode number 16. My guest today is Dr. Ilie Jampolsky. He's coming to the show for a second time. Ilie is a recognized leader in psychology. He served as a trained psychologist on the medical staff and faculty of respected hospitals and graduate schools throughout the United States. He has also contributed to the personal and spiritual growth of countless individuals internationally, including corporate consultations with management and CEOs of businesses of all sizes. He's the author of 7 books: Smile for No Reason, Healing the Addictive Personality, Walking Through Walls, The Art of Trust, Listen to Me, Healing Father-Son Relationships, an amazing book, and we're talking about it today. Healing Together, Going from Crisis to Calm During Turbulent Times, and Healing the Addictive Mind. He's currently working on a novel soon to be released. Ilie's books have sold hundreds of thousands of copies around the world and have been published in more than a dozen languages. He has been interviewed and quoted by countless publications, including Wall Street Journal, Business Week, the Los Angeles Times, Entrepreneur, and Women's World. To learn more about Ilie's work, please visit his website at www.drliejampolsky.com. Join us today as we talk about commitment to kindness, contemplating our impermanence, forgiveness as a process of giving up all hope for a better past, and waking up every morning and holding our hearts in our hands with tenderness and love. Ilie demonstrates to us in this episode how to connect with anyone instantly with intent. He talks about repeating patterns in parenting based on how our parents treated us and opening the door into the male psyche. Please join me in welcoming Ilie today and join me in learning directly from Ilie. Welcome, everyone. Well, hello. We meet again.
We do.
Thank you so much for accepting an invitation to talk.
It'll be fun.
I like that. What we want to do today is speak from the heart, be present, see where that takes us, and talk a little bit about where you're at the moment. You know, just before I got on this call, I was listening to the recording that you did after your dad transitioned. Ilie, that is a very powerful recording.
Well, thank you. It was from the heart, that's for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit, if you may. Let's talk about how do we live in the present moment and not by in the image making that we've created. How do we stay in that place of fullness and wholeness and grace, in that eternal spot where there's no separation? You said to me that you spend a great deal of time these days inwardly and that the extrovert in you is somewhere on planet Mars. Welcome. Welcome to the show. Let's talk.
Thank you. Let's do that.
Mm.
You know, you pose some questions about how do we do this? And I think sometimes the question I ask myself or people I work with is, how do we not do that? Because our natural state is to be present, to be in our natural inheritance, which is love, to not be running around full of fear, building grudges, angry, blaming. That's not our natural state. So we've become so used to it that we think it's our natural state sometimes, or what is normal. So then we ask ourselves the question, how do I do something else? But the deeper question really is, how do we end up living there? And so much so that we think it's real and all that there is. And when I really slow myself down to get at the very heart of the question that I really think you're asking, and that is, how do we stay in love, in our core, in our heart? How do we when I say in love, I'm meaning with a capital L, being in compassion and kindness and seeing the tenderness of the world rather than the harshness of it all of the time. Much of my work has been based on that journey, and it really is asking and looking at how do we remove the obstacles that we built to love? How do we remove the obstacles to happiness? How do we, there's so much emphasis these days on mindfulness and being in the moment, which I'm glad that there is emphasis on that. But when we start to think about that, really, if we're not there, we're someplace that doesn't really exist, this thing called the past and the future. And this is where oftentimes science and spirituality meet in some ways, where this whole construct of linear time is something that we've largely made up. Now, that's hard for many people to grasp, but the simple truth is that yesterday is gone and tomorrow's not yet here. And that leads us right here. Now, continuing with this idea of how and do we remove these obstacles, the first one is to really be very conscious of how we are right now. And if we are living in the past, thoughts of regret, lack of forgiveness, if things had been different then, I call it the when-then game and the if-then game. When God knows a lot of us spend our time there. It's sort of the if this had happened, then this could have happened, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Or in terms of the future, always putting off our happiness of when I have X amount of money, when I have the right partner, when I have the right job, when the right person's president, when, the sky parts, then I will be happy. When I used to work a lot with people in recovery, I would ask I'd give a chart up on the board, and I would have 3 columns, and I would have the past, the present, and the future. And I would ask, put percentages of where you spend your day in your head, right? Now remember, this is all in our head. It's not some force that puts us into the past or in the future. It's our choice that does.
And that's the tragedy of it all. That's the tragedy of it all, too. Yeah.
It's the tragedy of it, and also the doorway to getting beyond it is that we have to recognize that we're choosing that we're making it all up to be stuck in the past, that it's not the past that holds us back, it's our thoughts about the past.
And my choice.
Hold us back.
Choice, yes. My choice. Yeah. My willingness to readily go there or there, but not here because it's too painful.
Well, that's what we tell ourselves. Yeah. That's the trick of the ego. Mm-hmm. That pain is here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Pain's not here. Pain is in the constructs of the past and the future.
Yeah.
For example, I'll throw in something else with that analogy. When people would put their percentages of their time that they spend in these 3 columns, past, present, or future, you can guess that the overwhelming amount was in the past and the future. Regrets and worry, right? Guilt and projection and all of that type of thing. Very little in the present moment. And then when I would ask, where's peace live? Where's love live? Where's happiness live? Okay? Lives here, now. And tell me again, who's in charge of where you live, right? And all of a sudden, the light bulbs start going off, right? To the how do I live is get back to what is. And that is always now. Now, I've always been interested somewhat in the things in the world that manage our pain, quote unquote. So let's take alcohol, drugs, opiates, prescription drug medicine for pain, or others, right? Anything that alters that. Now, we know how it works, well, pretty much. We know a lot of the neurotransmitters that are involved and all of that. But we still have to conjecture on, well, how does that, what really is all going on that would cause us not to have that pain? And I have a little pet theory that it alters our perception of time. Okay? That for anybody who's maybe drank a little too much or whatever, you kind of, wow, that really, well, it seems like yesterday, or whatever. And it's true with pain medicine as well. So I have this theory, well, what if we alter our sense of time by bringing ourselves to the present moment? What happens to our depression, to our upset, to our blame, to our I'm not good enough, to the you screwed me, all the different things that we do? What happens if we really come to the present moment? They diminish.
They go away, yeah. Or they diminish, yeah.
And then I'll just add one thing, and then when I've been talking like crazy, that it's supposed to be a conversation. So
you're doing well. Just keep going.
My dad's work was in attitudinal healing, and he had many centers for attitudinal healing that started off working with kids with catastrophic illnesses, and later with other people, and so on. But one of the things that they found, and it sounds very simple, but it's actually very remarkable in terms of our own healing, is that one way to really get ourselves to the present moment is a little trick that actually works very well, and that's to give, to extend well-being to another person. That what they found is that these kids could walk into a group or be in a hospital and be kind of, full of pain and everything. But when they were helping each other, it almost disappeared. Okay? Almost disappeared. So these kids can be our teachers when we begin to ask ourselves the question, if I was more focused on giving, being of service, extending forgiveness rather than blame, how would I feel? How would I feel? What would happen to my own pain, my own illness, my own emotional charge, whatever it is going on? And what I have found is it works. Brings us to the present moment.
Trusting and giving. The Course says that to give, when we give, we only give unto ourselves. Especially if we do it with an open heart, with trust.
Absolutely. And
complete surrender. No expectations, no,
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt for one sec. For those listeners who don't know, I am almost completely deaf, and I rely on a captioning program, and it just had a little blip where it froze, but I couldn't reboot it here. Hang on.
Yes.
Technology is wonderful, but it's still not always smooth. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee. Lee, there is something that you said in what you wrote in December when your dad passed that had quite an impact on me. And I wonder if you might be willing to talk about that. So I will tell you what I think I heard you say. What I think I heard you say is that
when your dad seemingly transitioned and you were right there beside him, and with your mind, you were going between a very peaceful state where his spirit was one with you, and you saw the grace in him. And moments where you perceived him as a body that was in pain. And in that moment, you wanted to take that pain away from him because you loved him so much. You didn't want that to happen. And so you were going in between those states. And what touched me deeply was not only your story, your authentic, vulnerable story, but the teaching behind it and what you demonstrated with it is something that I believe the Course in Miracles is trying to convey to us. And that I don't need to go into my image-making world of good and bad, of opposites, or that all is required of me is to come in the present moment. And if pain is what I feel, or if I feel disconnected in any way, that I ought to take that feeling back to the decision-making and choose again. And choose to see my brother for who he really is. And in that choice of seeing and choosing again and seeing him for who he is, one with everything, that it is only in that fashion that I find myself. It's a little bit like, the protagonist of Breakfast at Tiffany's. At one point, she's being told in the movie, you keep on running away from who you are, but you keep bumping into yourself. And I think we keep bumping into our oneself. We keep wanting to run away from it because of all the images of battle we have made through those images of separation. And what I heard you, and I had tears in my eyes listening to that. I think I've listened to it about 20 times by now. I'm 20 of your viewers. You do. Because I just kept leaning forward in that there's so many images in there that I find myself in. The image of, your dad taking you camping and you looking at the stars. I mean, I've had a relationship with the sky throughout my life, and God only knows how many divine moments that I had looking at the sky and feeling that I'm one with it. And it's a very mystical experience for me, that experience in and of itself. But this process of choosing again and again, stepping out of the image making, coming in the present moment, and choosing that place where love abides, where peace abides, the house of love and peace, as you called it. Tell me a little bit about that.
What you speak to is so broad and deep that I'll bring it to, right now. And this lifetime for me, and I'm sure most on any type of a path of growth or expansion or spirituality, it's not like one, well, I suppose for some it's like this, but it hasn't been for me, like that one day I wake up and that it's like from that moment on, I'm never experienced the pain of the body, the loss of people that I love. And yet I've learned, I like to make things somewhat simple for myself. And not that I don't enjoy complex conversations, but when it comes down to it, how does this work right now? And for me, so much of it is, can this moment bring me to love more deeply? And the answer is always yes. That's what every moment is for in this existence. Does that mean that I always succeed at that? No.
Yeah.
But it's always there. And this has been, as I think you know, this year has been maybe a year and a half now. There a lot of worldly loss for me in terms of beings that I love very much, and probably two of the most significant, about 4 or 5, but two of the most significant are my father that you mentioned, and also I had a service dog of 15 years, who his name was Luke, and if you imagine a being with you literally 24/7 for 15 years, it's when there's some sense of loss there. And so I've kept a journal, and I've written quite a lot of things about grief over these last year and a half. But one was just not very long ago, and it's a very short poem, and it talks about exactly what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is this pull to be in the pain of the world that's cruel and time-oriented, and people come and go, and loss, and this other pull of it's all about to love deeply, right? And how to make sense of that to some degree. So I write, is death a sadistic thief, stealing our loved ones and leaving poison, permeating sadness and dissipating light? Or perhaps death is a liberator, sending us each from this illusionary world of time into the arms of infinite love, a gentle release from all suffering. Does all end with the death of the body? Or do we go in calm silence to a tender freedom where every moment of kindness and love we gave is returned 1,000-fold? Most will say they don't know the answers about death, including me. But what I do know is that in my humanness, I feel both the sadness of loss of so many dear to me, but I also feel that grief is this doorway that opens me to knowing more, to being more, to loving more deeply. And it is this in this moment that I embrace and accept.
How beautiful.
So that for me is talking about everything we're talking about finding this moment through the doorway of acceptance of what is, the person is gone, but also of acceptance of I have the capacity to love even in this painful moment. That has been my literal savior during this year and a half. And I'm grateful for those incredible moments of going in an instant from despair to feeling love more powerfully than I ever have, to feeling my dad's presence more powerfully than I ever have.
Yeah. Stepping in that moment where you see his essence and find yours in it.
For me, I'm curious about for you as well. For me, if I try and find, look, in my humanness, I want to have experiences of my dad. I want to have experiences of those who I've lost. So I can maybe seek those, right? But what I know is that when I'm trying to have those experiences, they are very elusive. Mm-hmm. It's in the moments of coming to the present feeling whatever it is I'm feeling, whether it's sadness or release or whatever it might be, and opening myself to the experience of love, and really almost prayerfully saying, please bring me in this moment an experience that I know the truth of who I am and all of us are through love.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like a little tweak, but it really is less about manufacturing an experience and more stepping into what already is.
Mm-hmm.
It's as though we're, on the banks of the river, and we are not asking so many questions about the origin of the river, where the water comes from, how do we get in it, but I don't know how to swim. How do I swim? It's just putting our foot in it.
Yeah, it's been a challenging year for me as well. Constantly, and what pulled me through, I think, is, like you say, my willingness to step in the present moment and say, I don't know what this is for. Show me the truth. Take me where I want to be. Awaken me to that experience rather than this which I know I'm choosing, by choosing to see the present through the eyes of the past. Help me out here.
And what happens for you as you do that?
Instant release, warmth, expansion, awareness, and disengagement from reliving the present moment through the eyes of the past. Instant release, surrender. It is the actual soul motivator from continuing to engage in this exercise, like you said, because it is getting more powerful and more complete with every instant I choose again. And it is it's a practice. How do you choose to live your life? What do you want? What counts for you? And I have come to a place where there is nothing else I want more except this, which is to me the peace of God. Nothing else interests me. Now, let me be clear. I haven't changed in any way. I'm still Gabriela. I still seemingly do the things that I do. If you were to be in my proximity and watch me do my things, nothing has changed there. What has changed is within.
And you're speaking to something, again, I like to get our nuggets so we can have them work, but you're speaking of the power of intention, of the power of making a single choice that is as unwavering as we possibly can. And most people, if you said to them, would you like peace of mind? Few people go, no, I'm into anger, dude. Go away. No, we want peace of mind. Okay. And yet, if we really did more of the science of thought, of, what thoughts are conducive to our peace of mind and what aren't, we've already talked about some of that, about the past and the future and all of that stuff. We don't even have anything close to unwavering commitment to our peace of mind. And you came to being able to do that more. And it changes your life. So any facet of love, which in my opinion, peace of mind is a facet of love, compassion is a facet of love, kindness is a facet of love. To have the goal to be able to right this moment is going to be about kindness or peace of mind, that changes everything. But we got to get to that spot of this is my primary goal. My friend Hugh Prather, who was a wonderful author who passed away a number of years ago, he was also, I loved his sense of humor. I like to laugh and he liked to laugh. And he said one time that, I really had this epiphany, a moment of that, it was just such a huge spiritual change for me. And I said, what happened? And you said that, I had the stomach flu and I had really horrible diarrhea and I could barely make it to the bathroom. And he said, I had this epiphany. If I had, the same commitment to peace of mind as I do to diarrhea, I'd be enlightened. He goes, not once when I had to go, did I say, I don't got time. Maybe a little bit. So as kind of gross as it sounds, I like to say, if I have the same commitment to peace of mind that I do to diarrhea when I'm sick, and joking aside, that is the level that you're talking about. This is what is important now. Okay? And that single change in the moment changes everything. Now, do we always remember that? No. But does it make a difference if you remembered in that moment for your entire life and consciousness? I believe it does.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that asking ourselves what our purpose in life is and looking for a meaningful existence and work and all of that isn't important. Of course it is. But I have found that my greatest purpose and my greatest happiness comes from following that purpose, is to, in any given moment, to see the light of love in my brother or sister. So in this moment, I see that in you. I feel your joy about your daughter. I allow that joy to enter into me. I realize in this moment and feel the presence of a greater power than we each have individually. And it becomes literally a divine moment. What greater purpose could there possibly be than that? Now, the Course, as you were talking about, really is the most eloquent system on forgiveness that I've ever come across. It has many similar spiritual teachings of other paths, but in my opinion, where it sort of, we all have our strengths and every teaching has its strength. And for me, the strength of the teaching of the Course is forgiveness. And it, as you were describing, kind of redoes what most of us think. Everybody, of course, has heard about forgiveness, but it's a very confusing concept for most people because, as Bill Thetford, one of the people who helped with the Course, once said, he had a great sense of humor too. He said, bring the son of a bitch in so I can forgive him. Right? So
the son of a bitches were sent to save her.
Yeah. So there's first this idea of condemnation, and then this idea of separation from the person and the thought that originated in us. And then this idea that I can be sort of high and mighty and, forgive this person for the horrible thing that they did. And that's a very ego-based view of forgiveness. We even do that with God, that we feel that the things that we have done are either unforgivable or that we want to turn to God to ask for forgiveness. But the Course says something, one single quote that it restates in a variety of different ways, but it really turns this upside down. And it says, I'm pretty sure this is a direct quote. It is, let's see, I think it's, God does not forgive because he has never condemned. And there must be condemnation before forgiveness is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about that for a moment,
Yeah.
that's pretty big, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my path is not to seek his forgiveness. My path is to accept his tenderness, his kindness, his love, his faith in who I am. And then to become aware of any and all obstacles that I have erected from recognizing that tenderness, his love, his ever presence in my life. So I shorten that oftentimes in the moment, if I'm having a judgmental thought or something like that, to let me not condemn, let me love.
Mm.
You know? So the interesting thing is, and you started with Gary's discussion on what motivates us. Right? Most people aren't well motivated to forgive because they feel like it's a weak position.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Or that it's condoning bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, note in what I was just talking about, there's none of that. There's no weakness involved in accepting our greatest strength. There's no, I'm not, we have this thing that if we love and forgive, we're condoning bad behavior. No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay?
As if they were
We're not hooking ourselves like a trailer to the bad behavior.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
seeing the light beyond that. So for me, it's, we all have hurt that we think it's been caused by other people or by ourselves, and we have guilt over the things that we've done. I have never met somebody on this journey that didn't have some of that.
Bingo. Yeah. Yeah.
So clearly, forgiveness is the great need of the world.
Yeah.
Right? If everybody has that, and that's keeping us from being as happy as we can possibly be, to be that kind of ongoing guilt and hurt and resentment and regrets, those cause illness.
Yeah.
Not just emotional illness, but physical illness.
Yeah.
And they certainly take a lot of energy away from healing. So indeed, forgiveness is a great need of the world. But it's a world of illusions. As you were saying, it's these stories that, let's take just the past. We can all agree pretty much we don't know about what's coming down the pike on the future, but we think we know everything about the past. Yeah? But 10 people can witness the same thing and come up with 10 different things that they saw.
Yeah.
And if you ask people about the motivation of the people that were involved in, let's say they witnessed a burglary or whatever, you'd get another 10 different stories.
Yeah.
So this thing about, the past being, super clear and real, it's not. So the greatest motivator for forgiveness is a somewhat selfish one, I suppose. It makes us feel good. It releases us from the past. Those who forgive are releasing themselves from the world of pain in that moment. It no longer binds us.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
It is. It is.
One more thing before that quote my dad and Oprah Winfrey on this one. So Oprah, after she retired, they did a documentary and they were interviewing her. And as you know, Dad was on Oprah many, many years ago, and talking about attitudinal healing, maybe in the 70s or 80s. And the interviewer asked her, you've done 30-something thousand shows. Look how many shows it is, like 30-something thousand. You've had probably 3 or 4 times that many guests.
Yeah.
Is there any one moment that stands out for you? And she said, yes. What was that moment? It was a moment that Dr. Jerry Jampolsky changed how I saw the past. What did he say? He said something very simple, but it was one of those aha moments. And that something simple was, forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. Okay? And it's a very simple and profound way to say it. Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past.
Mm-hmm.
So to really go into the depths of that, you have to ask yourself, what are all the different crazy behaviors we do when we're hoping for a better past? Well, I'll hold you, I'll resent you.
Yeah.
I'll be angry at you. I'll hate myself for what I did.
Yeah.
All these different things are just disguised hope that the past is going to change.
Yeah. What an insane idea when you stay and think about it.
Yeah. You know,
What
and for her, that's why she said, you know, out of the 30-something thousand shows, many more guests, that one was a thing. Because, and she went on and talking about that we no longer can tell ourselves the same story.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It becomes a weight that we don't want to carry anymore.
You know, continuing on that same line of reasoning, I totally resonate with Oprah on her aha moment, because I've had something similar happen to me. I think it was about a year ago. I remember I was on my way to a silent retreat and Judy called me, Judy Whitson Scotch. And soon after we got off that conversation, I was by the sea in a beautiful place by myself. It wasn't an aha moment as much as a moment of full surrender when I said to myself, I'm done. I'm no longer, and didn't say it with resentment, didn't say it with warmth, didn't say it with any kind of emotion. It was genuine. It was in a state of surrender, in a state of acceptance, in a state of celebration, but peaceful celebration. I said, I'm no longer interested. I think that what I've made with my mind that preoccupies me as far as the past or the future is concerned is insubstantial. It is nothing.
Beautiful.
And I know that something cannot come from nothing. It is not nothing with a little bit of something. It's nothing. May you be the witness to my awakening that I will no longer believe in this lie. And I shall seek the truth with peacefulness and openness in my heart, because by God, I know it's there. And that is the something that I crave and wish for. And so help me God.
It's a beautiful story. the part of how it touches me is that we try and do this life on our own, you know, over and over and over again. And we keep doing the ending up somehow in the same place, in conflict or in fear or
despair. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have some of us, in this case, you, have these moments that seem to transcend time. They're not full of like, you know, bottle rockets and yoo-hoo, look what I did. It's this profound knowing. And at the same moment, it comes when we are open to or openly ask for God's love to lead our way. Now, for those people who may be uncomfortable with spiritual terminology or God, we can just say love, to ask this love that it's divine and within the universe to lead our way. And this not doing it on our own part is key.
Yeah.
You know, whether somebody is ill or angry or stuck or depressed or in a bad relationship or whatever, you know, I'm not saying that there's no value in pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps, but there comes a time when we can't pull any harder. And what we can do is turn to love.
Yeah.
Now, with forgiving and carrying that weight, it can be one of the hardest things ever to undo. And for reasons I've already said, like we think that it condones another person's behavior or our own, or, you know, why would we say, you know, who would want to condone horrific actions and that type of thing. And it would only lead to them doing it again, right? That type of stuff. I'm certainly not saying that we turn a blind eye, nor is forgiveness saying that we turn a blind eye and keep ourselves in bad relationships or painful or places where we're going to be harmed. Forgiveness is more about our own internal perception that will empower us to do something positive in those relationships, to no longer be a victim. The ego thinks that forgiveness makes us a victim. It doesn't. It's the opposite. It makes us not a victim. So forgiveness becomes a way for us to be released from what we hold about others, but also how we hold ourselves back. And that we begin, and the ingredient, and if I'm wrong on my words here, please tell me, but you had a realization, whether it was, these words or not, that there's an unfailing love for you.
Yeah. Enormous. Yeah.
And that we don't live in the world only for another person's benefit, or we don't even forgive for another person's benefit. We oftentimes do it for our own. It turns the heels on the whole idea of forgiveness, right? So it's very important, somebody listening to this could be saying, God, I just don't get it, and part of that is because our ego doesn't want us to get it, doesn't want to undo grudges and anger and all of that stuff. But more than that, I want to be very, very clear about something. I have found that it's not my job, it's not up to me, really, to know what to do or how to forgive. Now, that might sound kind of weird, but the thought that I should know or that I do know is actually a really big roadblock. How can I possibly, let this go, right? You know, and so how do I get rid of this big roadblock and really forgive? To realize we're only asked for one thing, and that's to let love lead the way.
Yeah.
That's it.
Show me the way.
Okay.
Mm.
So put a little bit more wordy. It's although God doesn't, his job is not to forgive. His job is to love and let us know. It's his love is the basis of forgiveness. So it's not, we spend too much time thinking that, God needs to forgive us and then we can do this. No, my experience is that it's realizing that he never condemned and that love is available to us at all times. And when we do that, forgiveness begins to undo the fear that we produced, undo the tremendous suffering that we created. And it helps us return our mind to the awareness of love.
I think you said something so importantly, this idea of us thinking that there is a library of thoughts, of deeds, a library. And all the while, there is no library of deeds except within our mind. There's always just a choice.
Exactly.
A choice to surrender and ask love to lead the way. A choice to surrender and ask love to lead the way. How willing am I to let go? How willing am I to let go of the narratives that I've made? Who is the me living in the world? Who are others? Because I believe in seeming others living in the world. What is this world that I've made all about? And I think I know. And my investment in that knowledge that I think I have. But I think as one seemingly reviews that which has already gone by, there has to be a point, or at least in my life, I think we all go through that moment of realization, like Oprah in her show, was the most important thing that stood out for you. There is a moment where it's just you, and the witness of that experience is you. Where what is the choice except to be honest, to be open, and choose again? And ask yourself, what would you like? Make a choice right now. I think we all come to that moment.
Yes. One thing that I like to sometimes do is do a meditation on change, on the nature of impermanence, and sit and watch this, with in the world of time, and things change. Erosion is happening right now that will change something that we won't notice for this lifetime. I mean, all of that type of thing, all that's happening. And then I will contemplate an additional question, and that is there anything that doesn't? And the only thing that has ever come to me, sometimes things will come, but on further examination and contemplation, I say, no, that will change as well. Because it's in this world. And so the only thing I've ever come to is the one thing that doesn't change is love. That in its maximal expression, it's always maximal. And that I think of it sometimes as the light that goes through everything, even when we don't see it, or when we only see darkness. And then I ask myself, if this is true, which I wholeheartedly believe it is, I'll ask simple things like, how should I start my day? How should I go to sleep? What should I do when I have anger? All of these questions then become, do I want to align myself with impermanence or the one thing that's not? And this loops us back to some of what we started with around, grieving and my dad. I've done a tremendous amount of this. Okay, I am grieving because of the impermanent nature of my father and of my dog and the people who've passed, and I'm experiencing the loss in their body no longer being here, of it aging, being sick, eventually dying. But is there something that was in them, was before them, was after them, and was beyond all time? And I come to love. And again, I ask myself, well, I'll just use an example. How should I start my day? And this morning, when I was in my bed, by the way, I have a new service dog. A year and a half later, she's been with me for a couple of weeks. So it's always a wonderful being to wake up to. One of the things she's trained to do is wake up to an alarm. But with her presence there, I was asking myself this, and I remembered a quote. I can't remember where it was from, but it sat very well with me. And it was a father talking to his daughter, and it was, when you wake up in the morning, you must take your heart in your own two hands. And you must do this every morning.
Whoa.
Being tender with myself in that way is a gift, because I have a tendency, I grew up in a family where it wasn't always, tenderness wasn't always the prevailing piece. So treating myself with that kind of tenderness, it's very moving to me. And then I laid there and I asked myself, I did that, held my heart in my own two hands. And suddenly I found myself holding my father's heart in my own two hands. And those who I've lost in the last year in my two hands. And then I found myself that, without my thinking about or trying to group, to all my family that's still here, and eventually to the entire world and all of the strife that we're in, to hold the heart of humanity in my hands with tenderness and care and compassion. Now there's a purpose. So if I can start my day like that, maybe there's hope for this old guy, right?
Right. Maybe there's hope for all of us. Wow, what an image. My goodness. And you make me realize how many times I wake up and I don't hold my heart in my own hands. How often that happens.
Right.
And that I can do that now. I can remember this and choose again.
Yes. The world right now has more than its fair share of looking at fear and looking through a lens of fear and anger and everything. And I think those of us who take the time to find the tenderness within our own heart are then well served to be able to use that same lens to look on the world, even on space and time itself. And that, in my opinion, my experience, becomes a very small window where light enters.
Yeah.
And as we all know, doesn't take much of a hole when light enters, it begins to change the darkness in a profound way. So to me, it's a highly useful way to do our very best, to do everything we've been talking about today, to help remove the obstacles to the awareness of love in our life, so we can be that light for another person, be it somebody we know or don't know, and or even be that light for humanity as a whole. We don't know what the reach that love has. Now, some people may be listening to this and have a bit more of a cynical attitude than you or I, and like, oh yeah, like what's love going to do? And my answer to that is that I know, and I've had many, many experiences, that no loving thought ever goes unnoticed. It may not be something that we see the results right now, but it's miraculous sometimes what, throughout my, I no longer practice as a psychologist because of my hearing, but in the years that I did, I've had numerous experiences where, 30 years after seeing, like it's happened most with when I was working with teenagers, I'll get a letter or, actually I got a letter not long ago, like a week or two ago, from a young man who was now in his 40s and has a family of his own. And anyway, he was just writing to tell me that basically, he was saying, I know what a jerk I was back then. And, it didn't look like it, I was just a hard ass kid and all that stuff. But and I don't even remember, he said, I don't even remember what you said, but overall, I took something with me, and it took me a lot of continuing to screw up, but eventually I got it, and I wanted to let you know. And those type of experiences tell me that, and I truly believe this, I've got 8 or 9 books out there. I've done a lot of talking. I've seen a lot of people, but you want to know something? None of that is what has, I think, helped individuals. It's mostly about, is there love in what we do? Right? And if there is, it's having an effect.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the words you're writing, the food you're cooking, the thoughts you're thinking, the person you're driving.
We live in a time where there's so much loneliness and disconnect. It's the new epidemic.
Yes.
It's the new epidemic.
Mother Teresa used to say
Yeah.
that, there may be starvation in her neck of the woods, but the spiritual deprivation from loneliness on the streets of cities of the United States are quite a lot.
So I ask you, Lee, if I'm an individual somewhere in a city, in a part of the world, and I'm empty, and I think that I've reached the bottom in so many ways, and I need one word of hope, one word that will turn me around, that will remind me of something good that lies within, what would that be? What would you say to me? For any person that is out there listening that can't feel themselves, that they can't feel that love that we're talking about, that it is so inaccessible right now for whatever reason.
I would say this, And again, it's not about the words, and I think you'll see this. For a moment, trust me. Trust me that all time and distance can vanish in this one moment right now. And that I may not personally know you, whoever is listening to this, but I know despair, I know depression, I know hurt, and I know loss, I know illness, and I know struggle. And I know the power of love. I know what it's like to feel overwhelming love. And in this moment, I hold you and all people who are experiencing any despair, separation, fear, all forms of lack of love, that I love you, that I am in this moment a conduit for a love greater than myself. And I believe with all my heart that it is reaching you and entering you and being inside of you in this moment. And it's a seed, it's a beautiful seed that you need do nothing. Let it grow. Tomorrow, the next day, next year. Maybe remember this moment, wonder about it. Maybe this is what it's really all about. One person seeing the light of love in another. And it grows from there. And in this moment, all those who are experiencing despair, I see the light of love in you. That's what I would say.
How beautiful is that? How we act as lights to each other. We can do that for each other.
Absolutely.
We can remind each other of what's important. Thank you for that, Lee.
You're welcome.
Last question for you before I let you go today. You wrote that beautiful book about the healing between a father and a son. I was intrigued. I'm still intrigued by the title. So tell me about that. What was the impetus behind the title that you chose?
Being a man, I'm probably like most men, and I've heard from more than one woman something that goes like this. Why are you like that?
Yeah, Lee, why are you like that?
So joking aside, some of mine and other men's blocks to intimacy and many other ways of being in relationship can have a lot to do with our relationships with our fathers and what they taught, either directly or indirectly, including if there was an absent father. And the understanding the process, the story that is common to many men in our culture can be very illuminating to a woman, and with answering that question of why are you like that comes a unique vulnerability on, in this case, my part and my father's part, of willing to really be seen and to, this was, many, many years before the Me Too movement. And, but I think told much of the story of, just the, in doing that book, I spent a great deal of time talking to many other men and reading a lot of other authors on the subject. And it's remarkable to me, well, it's not really, I mean, but it is somewhat remarkable to me that how, John Gray wrote a book many years ago, I forget, I screw up the title, but Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, or I always forget if men are from Venus, women, I don't know, but they're, from different planets. And, understanding how, how that happened. Mm-hmm. So that's why that part is included in there, is to basically, help open the door in the male psyche a little bit for women to witness, to see the impact of the relationship with fathers. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The psychology, for many, many decades, eons, has been somewhat obsessed on the mother, right?
Yeah, I know.
And so this was, kind of saying, well, there's the father too.
Interesting. I look forward to read more closely your book and have another conversation with you about that, because I think there's a lot of wisdom there and a lot of light to be shed between those dynamics between fathers and sons that speak to all of us.
So people oftentimes assume, and probably usually rightfully so, that people write books on what they're an expert at. And that has never been true for me. I write, that would be boring. I write books on what
you don't know.
What I need to learn more about. Beautiful. What my leading edge is. And so the book you're describing, Listen to Me, was written with my dad, and that was my third book, and it's quite an old book now. But how I came to write that is I was ready to write another book, and I wasn't sure what I was going to write on. And how I kind of sometimes come up with that is I quiet myself. I kind of, ask what I got is, you need to write a book with your father on healing your relationship. Now, I was probably in my early 30s then.
30s, yeah.
And I had 2 young daughters. And my reaction to that was, well, yeah, what's the second choice?
No.
Is there a third? I had what I would call a quote unquote good enough relationship with my father at that time. We did not, despite that he was everything to me in my later years. That was a result of writing this book and working on it. In the early years, it was a very difficult relationship, and when I was being raised. And when I asked kind of my inner guidance, why write this book? You know what the answer was? So you can be the best father you can be.
Ooh.
Okay. And I knew there were things left over from my dad that were going to get in the way of my, being the best dad that I could be. And it curiously, in writing the book and doing a lot of interviews, I heard the same story in different ways, but the most profound was this one. And this guy said about his parenting, he said, I never wanted to be a parent because my dad was so harsh on me, and he would always like, you this. And he said, I ended up being a parent, and I was vowed that I would never be like my dad. And he said, you can't imagine the pain when I was looking down the other end of the finger. And we, as much as we don't want to repeat patterns, we do. And that was the motivation for me to do this book and heal.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to chatting with you more about this. Lee, I cannot tell you just how much I enjoyed our conversations and the space that we hold for each other.
Likewise, you're such a lovely heart.
And this concludes my interview with Dr. Ilie Jampolsky. For more information on Lee's work, please visit his website at www.drleejampolsky.com. Thank you for listening. Until next time.